thought about, like, just how normal coffee is? I mean, it's everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's crazy to think that just a few hundred years ago, nobody even knew what it was.
Oh, totally. I mean, imagine trying to explain like a latte or a frappuccino to someone from the 15th century. They'd probably think we were from another planet.
Oh, for sure. Welcome to Study Hall, everyone. And to But Why, though, where we always dig deep into the origins of, well, everything. Today, we're all about coffee culture.
Yep, coffee.
It's a big topic, so we've got a lot of ground to cover, from its humble beginnings to its global takeover.
Yeah, and for this deep dive, we've got a whole blend of sources ready. We've got historical accounts, we've got urban studies, media analysis, even some sociological perspectives on like the whole idea of third places.
Right. Third places.
Exactly.
So we're going to try to connect the dots for you and see what we can brew up. No pun intended.
Yeah.
We're going to keep it clear and engaging and hopefully as addictive as that first cup in the morning. Now, to help us navigate this whole journey, we're going to use a framework called the 3 waves of coffee culture.
Yeah, the 3 waves.
It's basically a way to break down the major shifts and trends in how people have, consumed coffee and how it's become such a big part of our lives.
Exactly, from the very beginning to where we are today.
Okay. So let's go back in time, way back to the mid-16th century, to the Ottoman Empire.
Ooh, the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah, specifically Constantinople, which is now Istanbul.
Istanbul.
This is where the first real coffee houses popped up. They were called kafé.
Kafé.
Yeah. So what were these places like? Were they just like ancient Starbucks or something?
Well, not exactly. These weren't just places to get a caffeine fix.
Right.
These were like vibrant social hubs. They were like the heart of the community.
So more than just a coffee shop?
Yeah, way more. Think like meeting places for merchants and intellectuals and artists, everybody. They gathered to discuss the latest news, to argue about politics and religion. It was like a constant buzz of activity and ideas.
So it sounds like a very lively scene.
Oh, definitely. Very lively.
So how did this whole coffeehouse culture jump from the Ottoman Empire to Europe? I mean, how did it spread?
Well, it actually took a while, and it wasn't always smooth sailing. I mean, at first, some people in Europe were a little suspicious of coffee.
Suspicious. Really?
Yeah, I know, right? Some even called it the bitter invention of Satan. I mean, can you imagine?
Oh, wow.
But despite all that, the appeal of coffee, well, it eventually won over. And the first coffee house in England opened in 1652 in Oxford. And from there, they just multiplied. I mean, by 1675, London had over 3,000 coffee houses.
3,000! That's incredible. It must have been a huge part of London life. And those coffee houses in England had a pretty interesting nickname, right? Penny universities.
Yeah.
So tell us about that. What was the penny university thing all about?
Well, basically, for just a penny, the price of a cup of coffee, you could enter a coffee house and just hang out all day.
Wow.
You could listen to lectures, participate in debates. I mean, they'd have pamphlets and newspapers lying around. It was a place for anyone and everyone to learn and discuss and share ideas.
So basically a university for the people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was a huge deal for intellectual exchange and kind of leveling the playing field a little bit. I mean, information and knowledge weren't just for the elite anymore.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And this whole coffee house scene must have had a pretty big impact on the Enlightenment, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, those coffee houses in Europe became breeding grounds for new ideas. You had philosophers, writers, scientists all hanging out, arguing, sharing their theories. It really helped fuel the intellectual and cultural changes of that whole era.
So in a way, those coffee houses were like the social media of their time.
Yeah, in a way, I guess you could say that.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and move on to the first wave of coffee culture. This was roughly from the 18th to the mid-20th century.
The first wave.
So what was the defining feature of this period? What happened to coffee during this time?
Well, during the first wave, coffee basically became a commodity. It went from being this exotic import to something that was mass-produced and accessible to everyone.
So it basically became mainstream.
Exactly. The focus shifted to affordability and that caffeine kick.
Yeah.
I mean, people wanted their coffee cheap and they wanted it to wake them up.
Right, so it was all about functionality.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah.
It was about convenience and consistency. And that's when you see brands like Folgers and Maxwell House becoming household names.
Oh, yeah. The classic coffee brands. And I bet this is when the office coffee break really took hold, too, right?
For sure. I mean, you needed something to keep those workers going.
Fueling productivity.
Exactly.
But what about the coffee houses? Did they just disappear during this first wave?
Not entirely. They did kind of fade into the background a bit. They weren't the main social hubs they used to be. But they did still exist. And they often became associated with more countercultural movements.
Oh, interesting. Like what?
Well, think of the Beat Generation poets in the mid-20th century. They were often found in these small, smoky coffee shops, sharing their work and their ideas.
So the coffee house transformed into a kind of bohemian hangout.
Yeah, something like that. It was a different kind of social space with a different vibe.
Okay, so now let's move into the second wave, which started brewing in the late 20th century. This is where things start to look a little more familiar.
Right. This is where Starbucks enters the picture.
Exactly. Starbucks. So what were the big changes that happened during this second wave?
Well, the second wave was all about the branded coffee house experience. It became an affordable luxury. And the focus shifted to creating a third place, a social space that wasn't home and wasn't work.
So coffee shops started becoming more than just places to grab a coffee.
Exactly. They became destinations in themselves. And Starbucks really led the way with this.
Right, and the founder, Howard Schultz, was really inspired by Italian espresso bars, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah. He wanted to bring that whole vibe to the U.S.
So what did they do to create this third place atmosphere?
Well, they really focused on design and ambiance. They made their stores comfortable with comfy chairs, and they started offering Wi-Fi. And of course, they introduced a whole new range of drinks.
Right. Suddenly everyone was drinking lattes and cappuccinos. It was like a whole new coffee language.
Exactly. And the branding became super important too. That green Starbucks logo became iconic. It was like a status symbol.
Yeah. And let's not forget the seasonal drinks, the pumpkin spice latte.
Oh, yes, the PSL. A true sign of fall.
And media played a huge role too.
Oh, yeah, totally. Think about the TV show Friends in Central Perk.
Oh, yeah.
That show really helped popularize the idea of the coffee shop as a social hub, a place to hang out with friends.
And then there's a Starbucks effect. Tell us about that.
Yeah, the Starbucks effect is basically the idea that when a Starbucks opens in a neighborhood, property values tend to go up. It's like a sign that an area is becoming more desirable, and that can lead to all sorts of changes.
So coffee can actually influence urban development.
Yeah, in a way it can. It's pretty interesting.
Okay, so let's move on to the third wave of coffee culture, which started in the early 21st century. What's the vibe of this wave?
Well, the third wave is all about artisan coffee.
Artisan coffee.
It's a reaction to the mass-produced coffee of the second wave. It's about quality and craftsmanship and appreciating the unique flavors of different beans.
So it's like the craft beer movement, but for coffee.
Exactly. It's all about single origin beans and lighter roasts and knowing where your coffee comes from and how it was grown. And the baristas in these third wave coffee shops, they're like artists.
Right, they take their coffee seriously. And the term third wave coffee was actually coined by someone specific, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Trish Rothgeb. She's a big name in the specialty coffee world. And she kind of drew a parallel to the three waves of feminism.
Oh.
Yeah, it was about this idea of empowerment for coffee and for coffee lovers.
And these third wave coffee shops tend to have certain aesthetic, don't they?
Oh, yeah, for sure. They're often in these up-and-coming neighborhoods, maybe in converted industrial spaces.
Yeah.
And the design is usually minimalist with exposed brick and lots of natural light.
So it's a very specific vibe.
Yeah.
And it attracts a certain type of customer too, right?
Yeah, definitely. People who are willing to pay a little more for a high-quality cup of coffee. People who care about where their coffee comes from and how it's made.
Right. They're more discerning coffee drinkers.
And they're often very active on social media, sharing pictures of their latte art in their favorite coffee shops.
Yeah, coffee has definitely become a big part of online culture. And with this increased focus on quality and craftsmanship, we've also seen the rise of the coffee geek, haven't we?
Oh, yeah, the coffee geeks. They're the ones who know everything about coffee.
Uh,
They can tell you the difference between a Kenyan and an Ethiopian bean blindfolded.
and it's impressive. And there's also a greater focus on ethical sourcing and sustainability in this third wave.
Oh, absolutely. People want to know that their coffee is being produced in a way that's fair to the farmers and that's good for the environment. So there's a lot of emphasis on direct trade and fair trade coffee.
So coffee has become more than just a drink. It's a statement.
Yeah, you could say that.
So looking back across these three waves, what are some of the things that have stayed the same? What are the common threads that run through the whole history of coffee culture?
Well, one of the biggest things is the role of the coffee house as a third place.
Right. The third place.
It's always been a place for people to come together, to socialize, to share ideas, to connect. And that's true whether we're talking about the Ottoman Empire or 21st century America.
And meeting for coffee has become like a universal social ritual,
Mm.
hasn't it?
Totally. It's the go-to way to catch up with friends or to have a first date or even to have a business meeting.
And coffee has also become very tied up with personal identity.
Yeah, definitely. What you drink, how you drink it, where you buy it, all of that says something about you.
And media has played a huge role in shaping how we see coffee, hasn't it?
Oh, huge. I mean, from the early days of coffee houses being depicted in art and literature to the way coffee is portrayed in movies and TV shows and on social media, media has really helped turn coffee into this global phenomenon.
Right. And of course, we can't forget about the economics of coffee.
Yeah, coffee is a global commodity. It's a huge industry. And that has a lot of implications for the countries that grow coffee and the people who work in the coffee industry.
Right. And the impact of coffee on urban development is another interesting aspect, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. We talked about the Starbucks effect, but there's more to it than that. The presence of coffee shops can really change the character of a neighborhood. It can attract new businesses and new residents, and it can sometimes lead to gentrification, which is a whole other topic.
Yeah, a complex issue for sure. So let's talk a bit more about the role of media. We already mentioned friends, but how else has media influenced coffee culture?
Well, social media is huge these days.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, people are constantly posting pictures of their coffee on Instagram and TikTok. And those platforms have really helped to create this whole aesthetic around coffee.
Right. It's all about the perfect latte art and the beautifully designed coffee shop.
And advertising has also played a huge role from those old Folgers commercials that focused on the family ritual of drinking coffee to the more modern ads that try to sell you a lifestyle associated with a particular brand.
Yeah, coffee advertising can be very aspirational. It's not just about the coffee itself, it's about the feeling you get from drinking it.
Exactly.
And you mentioned how coffee is tied to identity. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, think about your own coffee routine. Do you have a specific way you make your coffee at home? A favorite mug? Do you always order the same thing at your local coffee shop?
I definitely do.
Right. Well, all of those little choices, they say something about you. And for some people, their coffee preferences are a really big part of their identity. Like the coffee geeks we were talking about. They're super passionate about coffee, and they love to share their knowledge with others. And social media has really given them a platform to do that.
Right. It's become a whole subculture. And then there's the whole social aspect of coffee, meeting up with friends for coffee or going on a coffee date.
Yeah, coffee is definitely a social lubricant. It helps people connect.
And what about the connection between coffee and urban development? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so as we said, coffee shops can really change the character of a neighborhood. They can be a sign that an area is becoming more trendy or more upscale. And that can lead to gentrification, which is when wealthier people move into a neighborhood and prices start to go up.
Right, which can displace longtime residents.
Exactly. It's a complex issue with no easy answers. But on a more positive note, coffee shops can also be places that bring people together from different backgrounds. They can create a sense of community.
So it really depends on the specific context.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so all of this talk about coffee shops as social hubs and third places really brings us back to Ray Oldenburg's concept of the third place, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally. Oldenburg argued that people need spaces outside of home and work where they can relax, socialize, and connect with others. And coffee houses have really fit that bill throughout history.
They've evolved a lot over the years, but they've always served that basic human need for connection.
And technology has played a big role in that evolution too.
Yeah.
I mean, now you can go to a coffee shop and work on your laptop or have video chat with someone on the other side of the world. So coffee shops have become even more versatile in a way.
Yeah, they're definitely more than just places to drink coffee these days.
So let's wrap things up here with a quick recap. We've traced the history of coffee culture from its origins in the Ottoman Empire through the three waves.
Right.
We've seen how coffee houses have evolved from social hubs to third places to the artisan cafes of today. And we've talked about the role of media and branding in shaping our perceptions of coffee and how coffee has become intertwined with identity and urban development.
And it's fascinating to think about the connection between those early penny universities and the modern coffee shop with its free Wi-Fi. Both have really democratized access to information and ideas in their own ways.
It's true. It shows how coffee houses have always been about more than just the coffee.
So hopefully this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for that cup of coffee you drink every day.
Maybe you'll look at your local coffee shop a little differently now.
And maybe you'll even be inspired to learn more about the history of coffee in your own culture.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So here's a final thought for you to ponder. As technology continues to change the way we live and interact, what will the future of the coffee house look like?
Will it still be that vital third place that we all need?
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into coffee culture on Study Halls, but why though? Until next time, stay curious.